The Ouija board, an object of fun and pleasure, an object of fear and terror to some. Which is it to you? Are you inquisitive? Are you afraid? Should you be? A good friend of mine by the name of Charles had an unhealthy obsession with that object. How could letters, a planchette, or a glass ever be the means of contacting some other world, or some hidden beings? And what does it mean if they are so close that all you have to do is reach out to them? That question was one that Charles posed to me the last time we ever spoke. He claimed during that conversation to have discovered the doorway, the means to open a gate to the other side. He and his 3 fellow Ouija board enthusiasts had for years conversed with those creatures from beyond the veil, creatures he claimed had guided him. He told me that they live in a world of darkness and that they merely wish to come to the light, to be freed from their nocturnal prison. In their world, he said, there is only thought, no form or being, just the sense of self. It is a world trapped between planes of existence, from which we and all that lives in our world escaped long ago. They told him that we were like them once, that we too lived in darkness, but they were left behind, and for eons they have waited. Only when we call into the darkness of the unknown can they hear us, and then they come to that flickering flame of thought, desperate to find a way into the beauty that we take for granted. And with this explanation, they convinced him to help to create a portal. I warned him that he was playing with fire, playing with things he didn't understand, but he wouldn't listen. He believed them, trusted them, and his obsession to know drew him on. He claimed they were misunderstood, victims of a flawed spiritual evolution, and he and his small group would correct this injustice. Through his experiments and extensive knowledge of the occult, he became convinced that all these spirits needed was a better way to communicate, that the only reason that Ouija boards work is because the participants share a frequency, an energy with these otherworldly beings, and that frequency is alpha wave. All he had to do, he said, was induce alpha and intensify it, so that the Ouija board would be empowered by far more than the tiny sliver of alpha that a human mind normally makes, turning it instead into a raging torrent of energy through which those lost denizens could flow. And so after much trial and error, one October night at 10:30 p.m., he and his associates tested out his latest creation, a Ouija board made for one purpose only: a magical doorway, semi-crystalline in structure, coated in pentagrams and glyphs, constructed in part from his own investigations and part from advice taken directly from the Ouija board. It was his 5th attempt, but by far the most complex. Through this unusual apparatus then pulsed a resonance of 8 hertz, perfectly attuned to human alpha waves. At the start of the experiment, his 3 associates were wearing electrical devices that induced alpha brainwaves. They and the modified Ouija board were in truth a transmitter and receiver from one world to another. 10:35 p.m. was the moment I got the call from Charles, a desperate pleading for help. Screams in the background, filled with absolute terror mixed with the rending sounds, like meat being torn apart. Charles was begging me for forgiveness. I didn't know, and couldn't understand why. He was sobbing uncontrollably, and he told me that he was trapped, and that I must destroy his work, pleading with me that I come and burn his house down with him in it. I told him I couldn't, that I would call the police instead, and get him help. He screamed out, "No, burn us," and then it sounded as if his phone dropped from his hand. Then unimaginable sounds, the screams of Charles, mixed with something that seemed to contain the very audible essence of evil. Things as you've never heard before, and you really don't want to hear. Then silence. I continued to listen in a mixture of utter dread and cold, emotionless curiosity, almost as if I were looking through a window in some zoo of horrors, wondering if I was actually safe behind the glass. After what seemed an age of standing in silence, a voice came from that little portal to insanity I was holding in my palm.
"Is there anybody there?"
A voice said on the other end of the line. Then a low, deep, and slow laugh.